Oh, listen, obviously between two members there was a heated discussion about a very important issue for the economy of Nova Scotia. They have very different points of view. The Tories have very clearly said they would support the ferry. The minister in his riding is very passionate about it. He has seen the fallout of not having that ferry, and when from his point of view, when you say that your government's going to fall because of that ferry, you may retain your seat. I think he expresses his displeasure, obviously. You guys have been here a long time. It's many times in the chamber, the floor, the House, the voices get raised.
But should members of the House comport themselves like that? Should they be following other members into the members' lounge, going into a telephone booth, regardless of whether they touch them or not, and confront them?
I think the reality is, I think our Minister Churchill suggested this was started by the leader of the opposition, clearly recognizing that Minister Churchill is passionate about the ferry service. We as a government are committed to that. We know today there was a committee meeting where Mark McNeil was on with Bay Ferries. So it's a passionate issue for these members, and we're looking forward to continuing to have that service and continuing to build the economy of Nova Scotia, and I'm looking forward to question period.
Are you confident that no members...
Why not let it go to internal affairs for investigation?
Well, what we have here is two members who have very different points of view. The person who stood up, two people stood up. One supporting the Conservative Party, who said he didn't see anything. So voices being raised. So we had a member from our party standing up saying they heard voices being raised. I don't think that warrants going to that committee. I'm surprised they didn't ask the Speaker himself to rule on it. They asked him to vote in the House. That was their decision. As you know, I have a point of privilege that I've asked the Speaker to rule on. I look forward to him ruling on that. That was their choice, but there was no evidence presented today on the floor of the legislature that would otherwise suggest that two members raised their voice. Is that appropriate? I think we could argue that, but that's not something that would go to that committee.
Mr. Churchill said that he told you and informed you of what happened. What sort of advice, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
Well, I started out today at Seaside FM over in Eastern Passage, a great community radio station, and a great hour. He let me know that there had been a heated discussion between the two members. I took it as that, two members having a very different point of view, that I felt, quite frankly, if something had been untoward the night before, that we would have heard about it before now. That there would have been something come out, which we hadn't, and I came back and I had some work to do, and I went to caucus, and when I came to the House, I was told that there would be an issue going on.
Did you tell him to tone it down?
I've always worked with my colleagues. I can tell you exactly what I said. We had a great week. I'll tell you what I told all of my colleagues today.
I'm really told Mr. Churchill.
He was part of this. I don't have to speak directly to him. I spoke to all of them. We've had a great week. We had a wonderful announcement the first of the week in Kilbrannan, where we introduced large capital projects. Yesterday we introduced a budget that has received support. We look forward today. We had a committee that was very positive. Our members were on, and I said what we need to do is make sure we continue to conduct ourselves in a way that allows us to continue to make sure our agenda moves forward.
Premier, you suggested in the way you described it that your member was taunted by the leader of the official opposition. How does that change anything?
No, that's not what I said. I said what happened was...
You said he instigated it.
No, I said he came up to him and said, very clearly, our member said, he said on the floor of the House that you had, that you may save your seat, but your government's going down over this ferry. Even how passionate Minister Churchill has been, he also understands the impact, so he responded. Did he respond appropriately? The voices get raised? I think both of them have said the voices were raised. I think all of us, in the heat of the moment at times, get our voices higher where otherwise we may not. But that's not unique to this particular moment that has happened on the floor. I think if you look at the two members from each party who stood up, neither one of them said anything else other than voices were raised. I think that doesn't warrant going to committee. This is a fact. Today that we had a street checks report out today, we're not talking about. We had a committee today that where the owner, the operator of Bay Ferries talked about. We had a budget yesterday. This is a change of channel story as far as I'm concerned. If this was something that happened yesterday, why are we just hearing about it?
So you see this as purely politically motivated?
If it happened yesterday, why are we just hearing about it?
Because that was the first opportunity for him to raise it in the House.
And whenever this has happened before, he referenced in his article there was something that happened a few years ago. That was dealt with that night, outside of this chamber of police officers, if there's something inappropriate. So why raise it today?
So he should have called police?
I think a better question for me is when did he notify the Speaker?
So he should
was it
have.
after the committee?
So he should have called police?
Was that after the committee or was that before?
So he should have called police?
That's
the
his
way
decision.
Keith Caldwell did?
That's his decision. That's his decision. But what I can tell you, our minister very clear, he's very passionate about this position, as we are. Mr. Houston is very clear. He does not support the Yarmouth Ferry. And he was very clear in the committee today. Didn't support the Yarmouth Ferry. We do. And Minister Churchill has lived in that community when that service was cut off by the former New Democratic Party, and he understands the impact of his constituents. He has a responsibility to represent them, and he's done so.
I just want to be very clear here. Are you suggesting that he's making up the story about being grabbed on the shoulders?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you, my minister stood up today in the House and laid out his version of the story, and I believe my minister.